Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and it's time to get wealthy. You're going to learn exactly what you need to know and do to finally achieve the level of financial success you desire and you deserve. Recession, layoffs, inflation, it's getting hard out here in these financial streets. And now is the time when we really want to think about what financial experts often say, and that is have a little cash for a rainy day. But the question is, how do you actually find the money so that you can build up a cash reserve so that in case you're one of these layoff casualties, you've got money set aside instead of going to the dreaded credit cards? But here are three things you may not know about what it's going to take for you to actually accumulate that cash reserve. Well, here's the first thing. It takes time to achieve it. So start now. The other thing is, if you watch the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. And then finally, you cannot save your way to wealth. And that's why I'm excited today, because on today's show, we have somebody right here. She's a money scientist, and she's going to share with us exactly what we need to do to figure out where the money resides. So our guest today is Dr. Maria James. She's the money scientist, and she's also the creator of Wise Financial Fitness. The interesting thing about her, though, that doctor came from a scientific background, molecular biology, if I'm getting this right. But we want to welcome Dr. Maria James on to Get Wealthy so she can show us how to get our cash reserves in order. Welcome to the program, Dr. Maria James.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited because when I reached out to you, I was like, oh my goodness, she looks just like her sister. So you are in Baltimore now, and not from Baltimore, but certainly your degree is from the Johns Hopkins University. And I was fascinated because the first question I want to ask is, how did you go from molecular biology to money? I mean, I guess that would be the transition, right?
Yes. So people think of it as a 180 from science to finance, but for me, it's one world. I call it the money lab. So the entire time I was working on my degree, it's in cellular molecular medicine. So I worked specifically on HIV, mother-to-child transmission, but I was also not just gaining knowledge about virology, but also analytical skills, critical thinking skills, designing experiments and things like that. And so I took that and I applied it to finance. And so I transferred those soft skills, I think is the way that they're referred to. And I applied them to personal finance and business finance and came up with different techniques and all of that. So it's kind of one world for me because the same time I was working on science, I was also working on finance. I had co-founded a nonprofit and I was the director of finance at the nonprofit. So I was doing both at the same time. So it's a slight pivot for me.
Well, the other reason that I wanted to talk to you as well, not only you're a money scientist, but while you were pursuing that degree on a very small stipend, you were also able to save. And so I think that's a great place to start. And on Get Wealthy, we look at financial success through the lens of mindset, strategy, and execution, the formula for success, if you will. And I want to start with that since we're talking about having a solid financial foundation and making sure that we have reserves set aside. Talk to us a little bit about first, when you were pursuing that degree and you had this small stipend, how much did you receive and how much were you able to still save even though it wasn't a large amount?
Yeah, so the stipend after taxes, because we still had to pay taxes on it, was about $23,000 a year. And we had to pay the quarterly taxes. So you just sent them, well, I just sent 30% every quarter so that I wouldn't have a large tax bill at the end of the year. And I just have always been very, very interested in personal finance. So I had my little techniques and things that I had started using in college, and really before then in high school, and then in college got better at it, and then in grad school honed them even more. And I remember reading articles and things like that, and it was always like, oh, I stayed in my mother's basement and saved up, which is great for anyone who's able to, stay with their parents or have a lot of roommates and things like that in order to save money. That is absolutely awesome. For those of us who can't do that, or in a situation where it's just not possible, and you're like, okay, I'm taking care of my own household, how do I go about, saving money? I didn't see any of those articles, so I had to come up with my own stuff. I had to come up with my own things.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. Like, you clearly, I think some people are wired, right, to be say, like, you have different, I believe, beliefs and attitudes around money, and so much of that typically comes from your environment, right? So that's the other question I want to ask you. Were you raised in an environment as a family where your family was frugal, and so that's where some of those beliefs comes from, or was it the opposite?
No, definitely frugal. I am one of 9 children. I know you know my sister. We are.
Yeah, I thought there were only 2 of you. There's 7 more.
No, yes.
And where do you fall on that?
I am the third oldest.
Okay.
I'm the third. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So, we always had piggy banks. For as long as I could remember, I've always had a piggy bank, and mine was Sebastian the crab from The Little Mermaid. And you know how kids can be kind of obnoxious. I remember I had to be like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I was sitting on the floor and I was pulling the plug out of the piggy bank and dumping all the coins out, and then one by one, clink, 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 putting them in and doing that over and over. And my mom finally was like, Marie, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm playing with my money. And my mom said something to the effect of, no, you're supposed to, put the money in there. And when you get a lot of money, you save up a lot of money, then you can buy something big that you really want. And, I'm paraphrasing everything because I was like 3 or 4. I don't remember the exact word.
I'm fascinated that this was being done this young, though.
Yes. Kids can understand the concepts much earlier than we give them credit for, because that is just a memory that stuck with me. I'm like, oh, I have to save my money. And great saver, as you mentioned, was always putting the money aside. And that's one of the lessons that came from my parents.
So now here you are, and you are certainly an adult, right? And you've chosen personal finance as your vocation now, your business. And as you've been working with people, what do you feel like the mindset that it will take for people to adopt for them to be able to manage their money effectively, specifically those who find it challenging and are spenders as opposed to, frugal people?
Yes. So the mindset shift needs to be that every dollar has a job, right? So what you see a lot of people doing is, I'll pay all my bills, and then what's left over, I'm going to try and save some money. And we know how that goes. You end up eating out more than you think. Ooh, you saw this sale, so you're going to get these items that you really want, and then the amount that you thought you were going to have to save, you don't, or you have nothing left over to save. And so pay yourself first and give every dollar a job, right? So that's how I kind of have thought of it. And I've heard other people say this. So you want to give every dollar a job, where it's like, okay, paycheck 1, map out where's that money going, right? And then, okay, I'm supposed to have, once you do your budget, I'm supposed to have this specific dollar amount to save. Go ahead and send that over to the savings account. You already ran the numbers. You have that money. Send it over to the savings account, even if you have to split it up. Some money coming from paycheck 1, some money coming from paycheck 2. Once you get paycheck 1, the amount that's supposed to come from there, send it over to the savings account. Because if you wait, that money gets eaten up. it goes.
Yes, and there's one other aspect I want to talk with you about mindset, and this is what I find in the Wealthy You community that can be so challenging for people. When I hear people say, "Well, what if I don't have enough money? What if I don't have enough money?" And I would say that often I feel like that too is a mindset issue, right? So, what kind of mindset do folks need to adopt? If they feel like they don't have enough, what do they need to do to shift?
Basically, I tell people that you have to run your numbers and then convince yourself, right? I am a big proponent of affirmations, right? So saying those affirmations of, I do have enough. I am cash resource low, but I'm not broke, right? Saying these type of things to yourself so that you do that mindset shift and asking questions instead of stating facts. And so what do I mean by that? Instead of saying like, oh, I don't have enough money, change it to, okay, how can I get enough money to save? Because then that gets your mind thinking, okay, now it's a problem to solve versus this is just a statement and it is the way it is. So when you ask the how question, you start trying to figure out, okay, how can I do this? How can I figure this out? And you will start thinking of ways to save, and you'll be more open to ways to save. So that to me is a big mindset shift, changing it to a question instead of just stating it as a fact.
I'm so glad you said that, because I do think there's another issue, and that part of it is people settling in that current state. So when we come back, what I want to talk about now is strategies, right? So we talked about mindset and how you have to really shift and start thinking about not what I don't have, but what I can create. When we come back, I want to talk about some specific strategies that folks can use if they now want to figure out not only how to manage what they have more effectively, but create more. So when we come back, folks, it's all about strategy.
Let's be honest, as successful women, we're crushing it. Maxed out 401k and Roth IRA? Check. Aggressive savings and investments? Check. Yet, the freedom our success was supposed to buy can leave us stuck on the six-figure hamster wheel, watching retirement slip further down the road. There's another way. Get coaching courses and community at wealthyu.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and we're talking about getting wealthy and you making sure that you have a cash reserve, somewhere to land in what has become a pretty volatile economic landscape that we find ourselves in. And joining me today is the money scientist, Dr. Maria James, and she's really focused on helping you manage your personal finances more effectively. So, Maria, now I want to talk about strategies. And specifically, I know I encountered so many people who they may be in like have an under earner, right? And so as a result, it's created all these other things, where I've had to rely on credit cards, or I have more debt. And so my question to you is, when you encounter people who you feel like could earn more, or maybe are settling, right, and for doing with less, what are some strategies that you maybe convey to your clients?
Yes. So first, I start by showcasing people in the U.S. and around the world who live on a lot less. Right. So if this person can live on the equivalent of $5 a day, now you may not be able to do $5 a day, but you can do less than what you're currently doing. Right. So just getting that out there and in their mind that people live on a lot less and they can live on a lot less. Let's figure out how they can do it. Right. So first, getting that mindset shift. We just talked about mindset. So getting that clear. So now they're in the, okay, how can I do this, instead of like, I don't know where to start. Right. So now we're in a let's work together. Now we're ready to strategize. Boom. And then I one pull from my experience, we talked about when I was in grad school, I saved up over $10,000 on that stipend of $23,000 a year. Right. So got a few tips and techniques on how to save a dollar when you feel like you don't have enough. So going through those type of things, and a big one is budget. And I have people create what I call their survival number, right? So taking out all the fluff, any want out of the budget, what is that dollar amount that you have to bring in to run your household, right? Just survival mode. What is that dollar amount?
Okay. So that's more like then, from a practical standpoint, okay, you got rent, got to pay that, got to pay your utilities, got to pay your car note, or you're not going to be able to go, and those insurance. So those even fixed and variable expenses. But I think that where so many folks get into trouble, Maria, is it's those variable expenses. Like whether it's groceries. And now, I mean, that's the point. We're seeing inflation is making what that $100 a week grocery bill is now 125 or 130. So what are your what strategies do you think people can use now to address prices increasing on their everyday needs?
Right. So it's two-pronged. I feel like you can work on cutting the expenses, and then you work on increasing your income. So with cutting the expenses, don't only think of, okay, I have to slash this budget amount. Also think about, okay, how can I use less of my money to afford this same thing? So for example, years and years ago, couponing was really big, right? We had TV shows and all these things where people with the extreme couponing. So that is just an example of, okay, I'm not lowering the dollar amount, but I'm figuring out how I can afford it without using more of my individual money, right? So those variable expenses, doing that for each one. And then also things like, even with the fixed expenses, calling, because I think when people think fixed expenses, they think this is the dollar amount and I cannot change it. So while the variable dollars do get people into a lot of trouble, don't forget about the fixed ones, because, for example, you can call your cell phone company, and depending on who your employer is or who your alma mater is, where you went to school, you can get up to 20% off on the bill, right? Same thing with the, cable company, and any fixed expense, maybe outside of mortgage, you might be able to get a percentage off based on who you're affiliated with. So college, job, all of that. So call and find out what their loyalty programs are, and if there's any type of relationship between your college or your school and your the provider of the service, as well as with the job. So doing that for the fixed expenses, and then for those variable ones, I mean, just going all the way extreme, not becoming a minimalist. I believe in luxury and frugal living. I'm not about separating toilet paper and taking two bags. I don't go that far. Luxury and frugal living, right? Because at that point, none of us want to go. We don't want to do it.
Well, I do think the point that you're making, and that is important for people to understand when it comes to money, is that sometimes it's not about resources. Sometimes it's about resourcefulness.
Yes.
Right. And that often what happens is, we live to the level of our income and probably 15% beyond. Right. I mean, that's what the stats show. If you make 50,000, you're going to spend, another 10,000. And that's how we end up in trouble. And so the other question I have for you is just like, from a strategic standpoint, what are some of the, we talked about couponing, we've talked about, managing our resources more effectively, but what are some other strategies that people can use so that they don't go out of the lines? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like even myself, I would sometimes put myself on a cash budget, because I know when I'm, in my mind, I'm saying, oh, well, you can get points. And then I get that credit card bill, and it's like, what was I thinking about? Like, now I got to pull from savings in order to meet that, when in fact, I was thinking that I was being, strategic and going to get my little points, but I actually overspent. And so how do you put those boundaries around yourself?
Yes. So I think there are a few different ways to approach it. One is to keep the goals top of mind. So I tell people to do like a vision board, or just, I'm very linear. So I'll list my goals out and then put it up somewhere where you can see it, or take a screenshot and you want to, put that on your cell phone or what have you. So when you're out and about, that you're able to see it and you get that reminder of the goals. Put a sticky note on your credit card, so that when you pull it out, you're like, oh, is this going to put me further to my goals or away from it? So you get that reminder in the moment so that you're not spending. So one, keeping the goals top of mind, and then, getting alerts. I use something like some kind of money management software, something free like mint.com or something like that, where, it'll give you an alert to say, hey, you only got $20 left in this category. You sure you want to do this?
Oh, you mean there are programs that I can program my different budget categories, and when I like that. I like
Yes,
that, right?
yes.
So you can use prompts, and I do feel like the phone is always with us, right? And I think that I think the studies show that even from a communication standpoint, now we're more apt to respond to a text than we are looking to the mounds of emails. And so to that end, I do want to go there just from a budgeting standpoint. When you say budgeting, people always feel like, oh, it's so restrictive. What is your, how do you influence your coaching clients on, sell them on the idea of a budget? I guess that's the question.
Yeah. So it's for some people, it's, a curse word, they break out in highs and things when they say the word budget, but I tell them it's a plan. Is just a plan, right? If you want to achieve a goal, you make a plan, so prep for your success. We want to prepare for your success, your financial success. So we make a plan, and that's all the budget is. It's just a plan.
That's good. So a spending plan, the other thing that I find is that it structure gives you freedom, right?
Yeah.
Like I think oftentimes we're really thinking about being confined. It's when we don't have structure and we go out of the line that we have all that anxiety around it. And so I love, though, giving examples. And so can you give an example of someone that you've coached that was resistant to a budget, and perhaps how they kind of transitioned to it really being, oh, this is the best thing that ever happened to me?
Yeah, so I'll give an extreme example, because we talked about an individual who felt they didn't have any money. So I actually worked with an individual. We did a 20-minute consultation, and she said that, hey, I am over every month, and I can you help me? Where does I can't, where? And I'm like, okay, breathe. Okay, so let's go through your budget line item by line item. So we went through her expenses, because she had a very loose budget. It was like, this is the money I spend, not really, a budget. So we went through the expenses, and to make a long story short, by the end of the 20-minute conversation, we have figured out how to free up enough money so that she could save at least, I think it was $20 or $50 a month. And we gotten her expenses all the way down by $200 or $300. And it was literally, okay, let's go line by line. And for the ones that we can do something about, what can we do, right? So figuring out which line items we could do something about, and figuring out what we could do to get it so she was living within her means, and then had a little bit left over to actually save. So going from over every month to, okay, I got a little bit I can save every month. So
well, no, I do feel like the way our culture of, shopping has become like a leisurely sport, something, it's a hobby for many people, just in terms of spending. And I do feel like part of that is just being in this culture of marketing and consumerism that really, well, a couple of things. we get our money habits from they're inherited in many times. So if that no one ever taught us how to budget, you just think you got a job, I'm just going to make more money and that everything's going to work out. But what I do find, Maria, and I wonder if you have found this too, and the people that you're working with, is that if they can't manage what they have, that more money is not going to solve the problem. Do you agree? Like more money, more problems.
Yes.
You had it right.
Yes.
Like if
I
you
tell
can't manage
people
what you have.
exactly. I tell people if you mismanage $10, you're gonna mismanage $1 million. It wouldn't matter if you made $1 million a year. If you can't manage 10, you're not gonna be able to manage the million.
I love it. That's a good one. I hope the audience gets that. That is a nugget. That's a wealthy nugget, y'all. So when we come back, we're going to go right to we're going to go to execution. So we've been talking about mindset, strategy, budgeting, that sort of thing. But now, what do you need to do to apply what we're talking about today so that you can have that cash reserve, and regardless of what storm comes your way, you're going to have the money put aside to have it as a cushion. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. Are the only bins that will accommodate larger rollerboards.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you poop him.
Oh my God.
So what? Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and this is Get Wealthy. And one of the things I know is that many of you are finding it difficult to struggle in these difficult, volatile economic times. And so today I'm excited because joining us is the money scientist, Dr. Maria James, and she really helps folks manage their personal finances more effectively. Let's get Dr. Maria James on and let's get right into it. So we talked about mindset, and that really was beginning to look at your money in a different way. And now we talked about some strategies, and I came away from that knowing, listen, you're preaching to me too, that budget, just having some what do I want to say, rails, just like you go bowling and you have those rails. So, you don't go off. I do think we go off the rails a bit. Now I want to talk about execution. And the first question to you is, if someone's listening or watching this program, what's the first thing they need to do if they want to get their finances in order? Where do you start?
Getting an accurate picture of their current financial situation, right? So really figuring out where is their money going. So take a look at what they're actually spending, because sometimes we think, when you keep the budget in your head, you think how much you spent on groceries, or you think how much you spent on gas or whatever it is. Those variable expenses will get you every time, like we talked about before. When you have the tab in your head, we're always off. Always. So taking a look at the actual bank statements, or going online, everything's online now, going online and looking at the actual transactions and figuring out, okay, where is my money going? And don't worry about a budget. Don't worry about slashing anything. Just figure out where the numbers are. Figure out where the numbers are first, So you have a starting point. Okay, this is where I actually am.
So let me ask you this, right? Because I think that one of the things I'm fascinated by is how many people are afraid of numbers. I mean, literally afraid of them, right? Fearful because perhaps I can remember I attended a Catholic school and like all of the girls were put on a administrative track and that sort of being good typists and that sort of thing, and kind of steered away from any kind of difficult math problems, right? And so I, even in our Wealthy You community, I often hear, specifically around researching things, that, oh, well, I was never good with numbers. And so when we say, just look at the numbers, the question I have for you is, what is a good and simple process of me being able to look at where my money's going? So if I'm just looking at a statement, I mean, that's still very passive. What is an active way for me to actually get a sense of, oh, and you hear people say, oh, now I know.
Right. So set up a good space for anyone who's like, oh, I hate numbers, or I hate doing a budget. I can't. Set up a good calming space, whether that is the corner of your living room where you're facing the wall and you can't see everything else going on behind you, the corner of the bedroom, wherever you can set up. In the closet, I have people go in the closet and fix out a space where they can sit in the closet with a computer, wherever you can, in a space where it's nice and calming, so you can keep the anxiety low, you can breathe, and you can get through the exercise. Right. So one, set up that space somewhere you can be and you can sit it and get this done. And then secondly, like just really like going through the numbers. Unfortunately, you have to.
But I mean, I'm getting, even from a practical standpoint, is a tool, right? So does it make sense for me to, people like journaling, maybe you do something fun and you have a little, okay, so this is going to be my money book, and I'm simply going to write down because if I were to look at my bank account right now, well, one of them, certainly on the credit card, it kind of categorizes everything, right? But if I were to look at my bank account, I'm just looking at, here's how much money you took out and here's how much money you put in, right? So
I gotcha.
how would you suggest that somebody that is fearful, knows that they're overspending or finding themselves going to the credit card, that's when things are out of whack, right? Yeah. How do I sit down now and really intentionally get a handle on where the money is going?
Yeah. So one, making the categories that you mentioned is important, because as you're going through the bank statement, each transaction, you're going to put it in a category so that you can see how much you're spending for that dollar amount. I also tell people to create a money calendar. And this can be a literal paper calendar or, using like a Google Calendar or something. And you're going to put in when those bills are due and when you get your paycheck. And that gives a visual overview, which for some people is a little easier than looking at, columns of numbers or writing down transactions. Having that visual overview of, okay, now I can kind of see the flow. All right, all of these things are going out before I get paid. Right. So even though intuitively we know this, seeing it on the calendar helps people to say, oh, okay, that's what's causing the issue. These 3 huge bills are coming due before I get paid here. Okay, maybe I need to move this, or maybe, the previous paycheck, I need to save a little bit, so then they start realizing and thinking about, okay, how can I afford this so that I stop running out of money before I run out of month, right?
That's exactly right. And I'm so glad you said that, because I also feel like another way that people find themselves in trouble, or let me not say in trouble. Like, I guess I'm going to ask you this question then. How do you feel about putting your bills on auto pay as opposed to trying to figure out, when you're going to pay them, because you're afraid that if you put it on auto pay, then, you could be overdraft and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So there are 2 camps, right? So some people love auto pay And then some people are like, no, that gets you disconnected from what's going on with your bank account. So some people believe you shouldn't put it on auto pay because that keeps you disconnected. If you're paying it every month, you're paying attention to where your money is going. So that's one camp. I'm not in that camp. I believe you should automate as many of the bills as you can because of the fact that it removes the discipline out of it, right? So I believe in, being disciplined, discipline, not deprivation, right? So we're not trying to be restrictive with our budget, but we are doing the budget and then setting it up so that as much as we need to, we can remove ourselves from it. And our discipline or lack of discipline is not hindering us from the money going where it needs to go and us saving and putting money towards debt and all of these type of things. If you do the budget and you know how much is supposed to go where and how much will be left over, then you can be confident that I can set this on auto pay and have it go out. It might take a few months before you feel fully comfortable and confident with the auto pay. You might be checking each time, and that's perfectly fine. I say you should always be checking your bank account. Go ahead and do that until you feel comfortable with it. If you've done the budget and you know that you have that money to be put on auto pay, then go ahead and put it on auto pay, especially the things that are very important that you're like, okay, car note. I know I need the car to be able to get to work in order to get the money to do this, this, and this, right? Put the car note on auto pay. Rent or mortgage. I know I need to have a roof over my head. All right, I'm gonna put that on auto pay. So that way you don't have to be disciplined about that. You know that money's going out. You're gonna pay that no matter what. So then focus on the discipline with the variables, the variable expenses that are probably getting you into trouble anyway, and that you have more control over the dollar amount on how much you're spending anyway. So that way you can focus on those and rein those in if that's what needs to happen.
Well, I do think that I'm so glad you said that, because I do think that what I find and what I have found is that when people don't have their things on auto pay, and I wanted to talk about that, and that's the credit score, right? So the way these companies that you're scoring, and one of the easiest ways to really get into a problem where you have a low credit score is just late payments and free. I mean, even if you were to forget one thing, next thing you know, your credit rating is down, to 600 or something. And so my last question I had for you, and we only had a minute, if you could give one piece of advice around improving your credit score, what would you give to our audience?
Gosh, if you can pay off the entire thing every month. Leave the credit card at home is another one. If you can do that, if you're in a situation where you were just trying to get points, or you're just trying to, and you've been going over, leave the credit card at home until the discipline is there to be able to use it effectively.
That's good. Dr. Maria James, we've covered a lot. Mindset, strategy, and execution. And when we come back, I really want people to be able to take everything that we've shared with them today and put like a plan together, because I believe that even though we can give a lot of knowledge, that knowledge is not powerful unless it is applied. So when we come back, it's our analyze, optimize, and maximize segment, where now we're going to have a conversation about how you can pull all of the things that we discussed together and put them into action.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens on Get Wealthy, and we're getting wealthy around our personal finances today. And joining me is Dr. Maria James. She is the founder of Pocket of Money. I want to start there, though, because we didn't talk about it at all. Where did Pocket of Money, what was the catalyst for you naming your company that?
Yeah, so we talked about how, when I had that stipend, I managed to save up $10,000, and a lot of other grad students were like, we're on the same stipend. How's this? What are you doing? we get the same amount. And I remember someone saying like, okay, so there was a song that had like Pocket of Money or Pockets of Money or something like that in it. And someone started like, saying that. And so, I kind of laughed it off. But then as I was thinking about, okay, I want to do financial empowerment and really starting up the company, Pocket of Money popped back in my head. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to have people have more money in their pocket and keep more money in their pocket. So yeah, I'm trying to get them to have a pocket of money. So,
all right. I always like to know where it was derived from. Now we've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to talk a little bit about putting these what we've discussed into action, our formula of success, mindset, strategy, execution. But I want to talk about it from your own experience. Like, talk to us about when you're working with your folks, right? And you talked about the fact that people have to shift from I don't have enough to I forget, how did you put that? When we talked about the shift on the mindset, you talked about shifting to I have enough, or affirmations. Oh,
right. So shifting it to a question instead of just saying I don't have enough, asking myself, okay, how can I have enough? How can I save more? How can I, shifting it to a question.
And so if you could think about a particular example of someone that you worked with that you can share actually how someone applied, now I have enough. Give us an example of that.
Yeah. So let's see. I worked with a couple, and he was actually a financial advisor for investing, but the actual money management piece, he was like, I need help with that myself. So I worked with him and his wife, and they were actually several $1,000s over every month. And it was just like, okay, we're over. Do we just need to, they were going to pause investing, pause putting money into their retirement accounts and things like that. And we've talked about that before, Deborah, where we're like,
No.
Right.
No, I'm so glad this came up. And that's why I love asking about specific examples, because I also feel like, people, there are all these different gurus out here who are saying, well, no, before you invest, you got to pay off all your debt. And yet you need time in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fascinated. What was the remedy?
Yeah, so we actually, talking about budgeting, that was the first thing, figuring out where their money was actually going. So there were a few key categories where they were going over, and a lot of it was wants. So it wasn't that, their lifestyle was expensive for survival. It was that it was a lot of wants, right? So more than one car. It was a family of 4. There was 2 children. So him and the wife, and there was 2 children. And so why do you have 3 cars?
Oh, they had 3 cars.
3 cars. It was
okay, like, yeah. And you know what came with that? Insuring those 3 cars as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So basically,
maintenance, gas, like all of it. Yeah. Yeah. And so, go ahead.
No. So it wasn't resources. It was being more resourceful. So man, they were so car. I'm fascinated. What else?
Yeah. So getting that down. They took 2 or 3. They want to take 2 or 3 vacations a year, and they were, putting vacations on the credit card. And it was like, I'm sorry, you can't afford that. So staycation. So I'm not saying don't enjoy time with family. You know, I feel that is very important. I come from a big family. For me, family is very important. But we're going to do staycations. How do you feel about that? You know, so talking about that sort of thing.
Oh, Dr. Maria, this is so good. This is so good because, you know, there are two sides to the coin, right? There are those that don't have enough, right? And then the question is, how can I have more? Okay. How can I create more? And so for this couple, the question was, what would the question have been? Because they had resources. They just weren't being resourceful with what they had.
Right. So the main question was, how can I live within my means? So it was, instead of spending around 10 or 11,000 a month, how can we get that down to the 7,000 you're bringing in a month, which is more than a lot of individuals in America, right? So it was above average. How do we get down to that 7,000 a month? Because there's a lot of people living under that dollar amount a month. So you can do it, right? So it was, how can we live within our means? How can we get that down and still enjoy life, right? Because we still want to be able to enjoy the now. We don't want to, okay, when I retire or when I, you know, something off in the distant future, that's when I can enjoy life. No, how can we still enjoy the now, but how can we do it with living within our means? And so we got them down to that 7,000 by going through the different line items in their budget and cutting out different expenses and really honing in on what was important to them and making sure those stayed on there. Because I believe you should have a few, this is for fun, this is for enjoyment, right? That can be a line item in your budget, but it still has to be within your means, right? We can have that, this is for an enjoyment, but it needs to be, you know, within your means. So we did that for them. And by the time we finished working with each other, they were able to take a vacation, no credit card used.
And that's peace of mind. And so I really believe what you just described was an unwealthy lifestyle, right? An unwealthy lifestyle. And I do feel that now there is a lot of pressure on people, and that pressure can come from media. And, you know, seeing people, and they're constantly on social media, and they're taking these pictures, and they're in Dubai, and they're doing all of these other things. And a part of us, whether we want to or not, has to, I don't want to say covet it, right? But aspire to do that. And so the question I have for you is, if there's someone watching this show and that is their situation, right? Mindset, living above my means, right? What kind of strategy what's the first thing I need to do if I saw myself in that couple?
Yes. So luxury in frugal living, right? Pick what is the most important thing for you, right? And that's the thing we have to figure out how to afford in your budget. So for some people, it's vacationing. I like experiences. I want to be able to have at least, you know, one vacation or really great experience where I travel a year or, you know, twice a year or something like that. Okay. So if you really love to travel, we got to figure out how we can afford the vacation in your budget. For others, it may be, you know, things. Oh, I really love fashion, right? I want to be able to, you know, still be able to purchase items and stay in fashion. Okay, how do we afford that on your budget? So I said before, it's two-pronged. Cutting expenses, so things that are not that important. So for the person who loves fashion, things that don't involve fashion, there's some of them in your budget, we can let go of those things, right? And having that mindset of, okay, yeah, because fashion is a thing we're trying to afford, right? So the things that don't have to deal with fashion, that don't spark joy, that not going to affect my mental health if I let them go, those things can go, right? So whatever the most important thing is for you that you want to be able to afford in your budget, focus on affording that thing and let the other things go, because then that frees up money to go towards the thing that's very important.
I do think also, so what you're really conveying is that life is a series of trade-offs. That's basically economics, right? And so we have to decide what's important, and then we can trade off from there. I do think that you brought up, Maria, a really good point, and it's that people, what I hear is that people say, oh, I've got too many bills. I can't afford to save for retirement. Leave us with a strategy or an example, even a story of someone who felt like they didn't have the wherewithal to save or invest for their retirement because they did have debt. What would you say to them?
Oh, goodness. It's important. So I do an exercise of having them envision, okay, you're retired. What kind of life do you want to have? And okay, now think about what you're putting towards it. Are you going to be able to achieve that lifestyle? The answer is usually always no. And now they're in a mindset of, okay, how do I fix that? Right? So that lowers the resistance bar. As a consultant or expert, that lowers the resistance bar so that they're in the, okay, how do I do this mindset? And then it's okay, let's do that first, right? So go ahead, if you haven't set up where money is going into a 401k or whatever's being offered by your employer, set that up so the money goes first. It's going to help you with taxes anyway, right? So go ahead and set that up so that the money is going there first. And then, because you're not going to miss it. You're not going to miss it. You can't miss what it hasn't been coming to your account.
Yes, and I love that vision casting, right? Because then again, it becomes the question that you just shared. You said we need to ask ourselves, how do we want to live in retirement? And then how, is our vision for our future life really aligned to what you want to do? This has been fascinating. Let our folks know how they can get in touch with you, please, around the work that you're doing, helping folks get their finances in order.
Yes, you can start with my website, pocketofmoney.com. There's also some freebies on there. Depending on what your goal is, you'll find something for you. And I'm also all over social media. Look up Pocket of Money and you'll find me. Those are great ways to stay up on what I'm doing and to contact me.
Well, Dr. Maria James, thank you for coming on Get Wealthy and sharing with us exactly how to find the money. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. When we come back, I'm going to share the 3 takeaways from today's show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Get Wealthy today with Dr. Maria James from Pocket of Money. Here are the 3 takeaways from today's show. First, managing your money is an inside job. What questions should you be asking in order to get your finances in order? Second, budgeting. Those line items, don't look at it as a budget, but a plan, and budgeting gives you structure. And on top of that, you know what else it gives you? Structure gives you freedom. Thanks so much for joining us on Get Wealthy. I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and you're watching us only on Black Star Network.